Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. I was working on something else and I've just found something interesting, thought it might be worth putting a short video out in regards, and that's upside down trees and some of the ancient connections, especially in regards to Minoan columns, which are quite unique in that they are thin at the bottom and then they taper wider at the top. Various ideas on the origins and meaning of these, and the most common one is that they represent tree trunks, very much like the Greek Doric columns represent tree trunks, but Minoan columns are upside down. So as where a Doric column is broad at the bottom, gets narrower at the top, the Minoan columns, earlier Minoan columns, get narrow at the bottom, broad at the top, and that this is an upside down tree trunk, especially would be a cedar tree, most likely being from that region of the world. One of the more common explanations that is to prevent the trunk from sprouting. So, but I'm a little bit iffy about that, but just report that seems to be the most common connection. But I think there are some other interesting ways to think about it, and that would begin in a much earlier time than the Minoans, and that would actually be in England and the famous Seahenge arrangement. It's going back a few years now, but quite a while back. Seahenge was grabbing headlines for a while because it's this very ancient wooden circle instead of a stone circle. There were 55 oak posts around the outside with an upturned tree trunk in the middle, and also a trunk which almost similar to the altar stones in the stone circles you would find in Scotland. But the key feature here is that there is an upturned trunk. Now what's interesting is that years later, I'm not sure the exact date, they found another wooden circle in the vicinity of Seahenge, and that's called Home 2. And there you can see, so there's not as well preserved, but a ring of trees, posts around the outside with two trunks in the centre. These trunks at Home 2 are laying flat on the ground. There's not an upturned tree trunk there. However, Home 1, or the original Seahenge, and Seahenge 2 or Home 2 seem to be placed around the central trunk. There is an upturned trunk, and the prospect is that there is a ring of circles around a central trunk there, upturned tree. And what's interesting is that distance is 100 metres. This is West Kennet Long Barrow, which is 328 feet or 100 metres long. Now the measurements in regards to Seahenge also correspond to other stone circles, ancient stone and earthworks in England as well, but the length of West Kennet Long Barrow also represents the distance from Seahenge 1 to the central upturned trunk, as well as New Circle or Home 2 and its relationship with this upturned trunk. Now this is Mayfield Gardens in Oberon, New South Wales, Australia. Very interesting place, lots of obelisks and other symbolism in this garden. I'll link a video in the description. Observations, Mayfield Gardens. I visited with Geof Lewis. He's got some very interesting channel, but also the Mayfield Gardens one. Now the reason I especially bring this up, because as we're wandering around we come across this, I don't know how to describe it, an arrangement. And there are lots of, they're not oak trees, but these upturned, upside down, seem to be pine trees as well. And it was a little bit, I don't know if you call it sinister, very interesting looking arrangement there at Mayfield Gardens. Again, check out Geof Lewis, the channel, but also I'll specifically link the Mayfield Gardens observation videos. His channel focuses on alignments between, especially here in Australia and Sydney, but also long range alignments in other places as well. But here we see this upturned tree in Mayfield Gardens being a very rich in symbolism. The depth and planning of it, I couldn't say, but definitely lots of symbolism in these gardens. So back to the Minoan columns. narrow at the bottom, thicker at the top, generally thought to represent an upturned tree trunk. For instance, I mentioned the Doric being like a normal tree trunk, but Minoan is upside down. Seahenge in England, which is not just Seahenge 1, the upturned tree, but they seem to be arranged around a central upturned tree trunk. And now it brings us to some other concepts in regarding upside down trees, and there we'll look at the Bhagavad Gita. It's in chapter 15, and it's referred to as the Ashvattha tree. I will link some videos in the description where people much more versed in the understanding of these things and what it represents. But in short, the upturned tree, I'm butchering this again, please, you can Google it, YouTube search, links in the description, but the upside down tree represents divinity. And the lower portion of the branches, which should be on top, sort of represent the more mortal aspect of man, but the upside down, the roots reaching up, as this image sort of shows, represents the divine aspect of this upturned tree. Links in the description for more on that. Upside down trees and Christmas trees. Now, this is from 2019. This year, it seems to be there is a trend into hanging Christmas trees upside down, and that is actually a reflection, so looking back at the past and the origins of the Christmas tree. Now, it was in the West, not exclusively, but Queen Victoria did a lot to make the Christmas tree popular in more recent times. It's not a very ancient thing, and it basically comes from Germany. Again, keeping that's a narrow definition, but as the story goes, Saint Boniface, he in the 7th century went to promote Christianity in what was still the pagan north of Germany, and he cut down the Donner tree, or also called the Thunder Oak, a sacred tree of 4, where just before Christmas Eve each year, which just happens to be the Northern Hemisphere winter solstice, the pagans would sacrifice a child on this tree, as the story goes, and to show the power of his particular god, Saint Boniface cut down this tree, and then nearby was a small fir tree. He then used that to preach Christianity to the pagans and to explain the Trinity. Again, this is as the most legends go. Then the tree would be. Then there began a tradition of these newly converted Christians to hang a fir tree upside down. Again, because it looks more like the cross. Now, in Eastern Europe, this is still more of a tradition, upside down Christmas trees. Again, a representation of the cross, but also, as the stories go in regards to Saint Boniface, it was to do with firstly cutting down the oak of 4 and the pagan element there on Christmas Eve, winter solstice, using a small fir tree, a pine tree, to teach Christian doctrine, especially the Trinity, and then the upside down tree being a representation of the cross. So these upside down trees, whether they're in these wooden circles, such as Seahenge, the larger complex, also appearing in the Bhagavad Gita and Hindu legend, mythology, spirituality, and these concepts. Now, trees of various trees of life, again, cross cultures, but the trees being so elemental, it shouldn't be a surprise that they would appear. Minoan columns being representing upside down trees. The original Christmas tree design, still in many places, being an upside down tree, and as we see here in Mayfield Gardens. I don't really have much to add to these. It's always been an interesting thing to me, because I'm working on something else and touched on Minoan columns and this upside down tree. I thought I'd make a shorter video on it. Something to be researched for maybe the deeper connections. I can't really say too much apart from that. Also, again, check out Jeff Lewis's channel in general, but specifically the Mayfield Gardens video because it'll give you a good general idea of the type of work that he does. With that, SGD, hope you enjoyed. Cheers and have a good one.